The Youth Endowment Fund's mission is to build knowledge and evidence about what works best to stop children and young people becoming involved in violence. We will work to make significant and lasting change for children, young people, families and communities. We will fund good work through our theme grants rounds, place-based work and targeted projects, find what works, and then work for change to prevent children and young people from becoming involved in violence. The rest of the slides will focus predominantly on our theme grants rounds and targeted projects. But if you would like to learn more about the YEF's work, please visit our website and strategy document. We want to ensure that you understand why evaluation is so important to us, roles and responsibilities, our approach to evaluation, and what kind of projects we're looking to fund and evaluate in our theme grants rounds and targeted projects. Each YEF project has two equally important elements: a promising project, which we hope will help to prevent young people from becoming involved in violence, and a high-quality, independent evaluation of how effective the project is at achieving its intended outcomes. For example, in our launch grant round, launched in summer 2019, we funded the delivery of Functional Family Therapy Gangs, or FFTG, a targeted intervention for young people at risk of gang involvement and exploitation. FFTG is being evaluated by the University of Greenwich, who are running a feasibility study, followed by a pilot study. We'll explain more about different types of evaluations and what we're looking to fund later in the presentation. All YEF projects are independently evaluated, and as a partner, we'll work with you to evaluate your project to find out if and how it works. We'll appoint an evaluator from our evaluator panel to evaluate your project. Your evaluator is selected based on a competitive tendering process, and the evaluator appointed is the one that has shown the best understanding of the needs of your project. More information about who is on our evaluator panel can be found on our website. You'll work with the evaluator to co-design the evaluation to make sure the evaluation works for your project. It should be noted that YEF grantees have responsibility relating to the delivery of both the project and the evaluation, and all children involved in a YEF-funded project need to be involved in the evaluation as well. The evaluation will result in a published report that will share lessons for practitioners and policymakers. We also hope that the results of the evaluation will be useful for you and will enable you to learn about your project and improve the services you deliver to children and young people. For our theme grants rounds and targeted projects, we run a two-stage application process. Stage 1 consists of grant application submission and shortlisting. After you have submitted your application, it will be reviewed by our team of trained assessors, and promised projects will be invited to attend an interview. Our team of assessors will then make their recommendation on applications to be sent to our Grants and Evaluation Committee for review. It's up to this committee to make the final decisions on what progresses to the next stage of the application process. Only shortlisted applicants will progress to Stage 2. It's at Stage 2 that an evaluator is appointed to your project. Following evaluator appointment, we'll set up at least 3 workshops between your team, your evaluator, and members of our programme and evaluation team. During this period, you'll work closely with your evaluator to create a detailed plan for the delivery of your project. The relationship with your evaluator is very important, and during this stage, it will be important to ensure the needs of both the project and evaluation are balanced. It's worth noting that this co-design process takes a lot of time. That's because we want to make sure that we can run the best possible evaluation. This might mean making some adaptations to your original project proposal, but by giving you this time to work closely with an evaluator, we can make sure that the evaluation works for your project. Following the co-design phase, you and your evaluator will be required to submit a final project and evaluation proposal. This proposal will be reviewed by our Grants and Evaluation Committee, and a final decision will be made on whether to grant your project funding. It's important to note that applicants that reach Stage 2 and submit a final proposal are not guaranteed funding. We'll then let you know whether your project has been awarded funding, and the project can then begin. For your project to be successful, you will need to have a strong working relationship with your evaluator and be clear about who is responsible for what. During the co-design phase, we'll go into the roles and responsibilities of everyone involved in the project and evaluation in more detail. But this diagram shows a high-level overview of the roles and responsibilities of the grantee, evaluator, and the YEF programs and evaluation teams. As the grantee, you will be responsible for delivering the project, recruiting participants, and supporting the evaluation. The evaluator will be responsible for designing and delivering the evaluation, supporting delivery of the project, analysing and archiving the data, and writing the evaluation report. As the grantee, your main point of contact at YEF is the Programme Manager, and the Evaluation Manager is the main point of contact for the evaluator. The Programme Manager and Evaluation Manager are there to ensure the project and evaluation continue to meet YEF's strategic objectives and support and mediate the relationship between you and your evaluator. After the setup phase, we really want you and your evaluator to work together. We expect that you'll be able to answer a lot of questions by working directly with your evaluator, but you can, of course, speak to us when you both have questions, and we'll do our best to help. We're here to support you so that together we can make sure the project and evaluation is the highest possible quality. Next, we look at why evaluation is so important and how it can help benefit your project and the children and young people you serve. In essence, we evaluate all YEF-funded projects because we want to find out what works to prevent children and young people from becoming involved in serious violence, and evaluation helps us answer this question. What we've learned from other fields is that we often don't know which projects work, and actually, a general rule of thumb is that around 80% of projects have no positive effects. For example, out of 13,000 randomized control trials of new products and strategies by Google and Microsoft, over 80% found no significant result. Similarly, evaluation conducted by the European Commission found that 80% of projects were unlikely to reduce carbon emissions. As well as not having positive effects, rigorous evaluations have shown that some projects actually have harmful effects. One example of this is Scared Straight. Scared Straight is a very popular program in the US. It takes children and young people on the edge of the youth justice system into prison, exposes them to prison treatment and culture in an attempt to scare them out of problem behaviour. However, rigorous evaluation has shown that instead of reducing crime and problem behaviour, Scared Straight actually leads to more crime. Without rigorous evaluation, we wouldn't know that some interventions not only don't have positive effects, but they actually cause harm. Evaluation is important as independent and transparent evaluations minimise bias and therefore improve people's confidence in the results. Well-designed evaluations can tell us how much of a difference a project is making, to which outcomes, for whom, and under what circumstances. What lessons can be learned about how this or similar projects can work better in the future, and how much the project really costs. Often, the positive impact of a service feels obvious. However, evaluation will help us to understand whether a particular activity has the impact it intends to. For example, preventing children's involvement in crime or reducing aggression. This will help us all to make sure that we are providing children and young people with the services that best meet their needs. We know, for example, that some projects work better than others in certain circumstances, like for some specific outcomes or particular target groups. Some projects cost more than others too. So it's essential to evaluate things properly if we're to make sure that resources available are spent as effectively as possible. Evaluation also enables us to learn how to do things better and share lessons across the sector. The YAF is committed to making change happen to keep children and young people safe. Often, people who care about young people feel they know what needs to be done to improve things, but nothing changes. One of the reasons for this is that it isn't clear enough what it is that works. Through our evaluations, we will increase understanding about the delivery and implementation of projects and generate evidence on what works for whom and under what circumstances, as well as evidence on what doesn't work. We will share evidence and knowledge in different formats to promote evidence-based knowledge and practice to ensure that good decisions can be made about which projects to invest in. This will include our toolkit that's coming in June 21, as well as easy to understand summaries of our evaluations. We really want the evaluation of your project to be of value to you, and results from evaluations can help you improve your service delivery and generate further interest. You can use the evidence generated through a YF evaluation to improve the quality of implementation, better understand which elements of your project work well and which might need improving or changing, and make the case to service users and potential investors about the proven benefit of your project. Next, we look at YAF's approach to evaluation. To develop evidence of what works to prevent youth violence, we take a common approach to the evaluations of all YAF-funded projects. All YAF evaluations will be as rigorous as possible whilst balancing project delivery, provide insight on the potential of the project to improve child offending outcomes, be appropriate to the level of development of the project, be of value to you, the grantee, as well as to YAF, and be able to track change over time through long-term follow-up. Our approach to evaluation has been informed by the Early Intervention Foundation's 10 Steps to Evaluation Success Guide. These evaluation steps can be used to develop and establish a project's evidence base. We think, for a lot of our theme grants rounds, that steps 4 to 7 are the most relevant, though ultimately, the goal over the life of the Youth Endowment Fund is to take as many projects as possible to step 10, where they're being effectively delivered at scale. YAF is committed to rigorous impact evaluation to determine the impact of the projects we fund. However, rigorous impact evaluations are typically complex and expensive, and so it's potentially wasteful to conduct them on projects unless we have some evidence that this model is feasible to deliver and that it's likely to improve child outcomes. We will therefore consider funding feasibility and pilot studies where appropriate. Our theme grant rounds will tend to focus on projects that are ready for an efficacy or effectiveness evaluation, or will be ready for this sort of evaluation within 2 years. This means that projects that are in scope are likely to be those that are already being delivered, have some evidence of successful implementation, have some evidence that it leads to positive outcomes for children and young people, and that can deliver to at least 100 children and young people per year after 2 years of working with us. In contrast, projects that are likely to be out of scope for STEAM grants rounds are those that are unable to explain why and how the project works and have no existing evidence base, and those that don't have sufficient scale and are not likely to be able to deliver to at least 100 young people per year after 2 years. For further information about this, please have a look at the Being a YEF Partner section in our 2021 prospectus. These next few slides will go into more detail on stages 5 to 7 of the 10 steps, pilot, efficacy and effectiveness evaluations. Please note that the type of evaluation will depend on the stage of development of your project. Pilot studies are used to test the project's evidence of promise for improving child outcomes and assess the feasibility of conducting an efficacy study. The majority of YEF pilot studies will be small-scale randomized control trials to test whether it's possible to use robust evaluation methods with this project. We might commission a pilot evaluation in instances where the project is already being delivered, but maybe with a small number of settings or participants, and the project isn't ready to go straight into an efficacy evaluation, as this requires a large number of participants. A pilot study allows us to further refine the project and test evaluation procedures ahead of an efficacy study. Efficacy and effectiveness studies are both referred to as impact evaluations and include both randomized control trials and quasi-experimental design. Efficacy studies are used to test whether the project can work under ideal conditions. Alongside every YEF efficacy study, an implementation and process evaluation will be conducted to tell us more about how the project was implemented and provide context for the efficacy study. In contrast to pilot studies, we're likely to commission an efficacy study when the project is already being delivered, but to more participants, and the delivery team has the capacity to recruit and deliver the number of participants or settings required. While efficacy studies are used to test whether the project can work under ideal conditions, effectiveness studies are used to test whether the project works in real-world circumstances when it's delivered at scale. Effectiveness studies will be commissioned when the project is being delivered to lots of participants and the project has a scalable model. In order to find out what works to prevent children becoming involved in violence, we're looking to evaluate projects that are ready for rigorous impact evaluations or could be supported to reach that point. Impact evaluations include both quasi-experimental designs, or QEDs, and randomized control trials, RCTs. QEDs and RCTs both include a treatment group and a control group. This means that one group receives the project while the other group doesn't. By looking at both groups before and after you work to support young people, we can see the impact your project made. The main difference between a QED and an RCT is that in RCTs, individuals are randomly assigned to either the treatment or control group, whereas QEDs don't make use of randomization methods. RCTs are one of the most robust ways to find out whether a project is truly having its intended impact on young people's lives. It allows us to see what happens both in the presence of and the absence of a project. By testing projects in this way, we can absolutely make sure the projects we're investing in and providing to our most vulnerable young people have the best possible chance of making a difference. Potential YEF grantees should consider whether their project is ready for this kind of evaluation. Please note that the exact evaluation design will depend on the nature of the project being evaluated and will be developed during the co-design phase with you and your evaluator. Outcome measurement is a critical part of any evaluation. YF evaluations will measure serious violence and offending, along with risk and protective factors, like aggression, that are associated with later offending and violence. It's very important that the measures used in YF evaluations are practical, valid, and reliable, where validity refers to the extent to which a measure quantifies what it claims to measure, and reliability refers to how stable, consistent, or reproducible a measure is. YEF has a set of core measures that are used in all evaluations. This enables comparison between projects. It's very important not to have too many measures because of the burden this places on participants, and because this can be considered fishing for positive results. The outcome measures must align with the project's theory of change and will be discussed during the co-design phase. Ultimately, the evaluator must approve the outcome measures, and they will be agreed by YEF. The evaluator usually delivers the outcome measure blind to group allocation. This means the evaluator won't know which young people have received the project and which haven't. The long-term follow-up of young people who have been involved in YF projects and evaluation is really important to us, as this will enable us to learn what can actually help reduce serious youth violence. Long-term offending is tracked using the police national computer. In order to enable this to be done, at the end of the evaluation, evaluators will be required to archive the data they collected as part of the evaluation, along with personally identifying information. There is currently a big evidence gap in England and Wales. We don't know what works to prevent children and young people offending. This means we're not able to ensure children and young people get the right support at the right time in order to prevent them becoming involved in crime and violence. YF evaluations and the plan to hold data to allow the long-term follow-up of children and young people in the future provide a unique opportunity in order to learn what can actually help reduce crime and violence. The long-term follow-up requires collecting and storing some highly sensitive data for a long period of time. We recognise that many of you will be rightly worried about the potential risks around this and the harm that could happen if this data is handled poorly or disclosed. We know that there have been some high-profile cases where other organisations have got this wrong. We therefore want to assure you that we have designed a process with the Office for National Statistics that means data collected as part of YF evaluations will be stored in a highly secure environment. Individual children and young people won't be identifiable within the data, and only approved researchers will be allowed to access the data archive for research purposes only. The only reason anyone will be able to access the data is for conducting research that is in the public good. Multiple checks will ensure data isn't accessed for the wrong purpose, and laws prevent the use of YEF data to target children and young people directly. It is worth noting that the data archive isn't optional, and before becoming a YEF grantee, this is something that you need to agree to. More information on the data archive can be found on our website, and we encourage you to read this through. Next, we think about whether your project is ready for YEF evaluation. As we've mentioned previously, in our themed grants rounds, we look to fund projects that are ready to run a large-scale efficacy and/or effectiveness evaluation through an RCT or QED, or will within 2 years of YEF funding. With this in mind, the projects that are in scope are those that are already delivering and can show some evidence of their outcomes, those that are delivering at sufficient scale and are delivering to enough young people that will allow for large-scale evaluation or will be able to scale up delivery within 2 years. We're looking for projects that can work with at least 100 children and young people by the final year of YEF funding. We don't expect you to have a clear idea of how your project could be evaluated when you apply, and during the co-design phase, you'll work with us and your evaluator to shape your project so that it can be robustly evaluated. It should be noted that designing an evaluation may require your proposed project plan to be adapted in some way. For example, this may involve adjusting some elements of delivery or delivering a project on a larger scale than you initially proposed. We have an extensive co-design process which may take up to 3 months to support this. We're looking to work with partners who are committed to understanding more about their project and who are keen to work with us and an independent evaluator in this way. It's important that everyone's happy with the agreed project and evaluation design before any delivery starts. If this isn't the case, we won't be able to go ahead with the project. In themed grants rounds, we won't be able to fund projects that can't explain why and how their project leads to change and have no evidence base, or don't have sufficient scale and are unlikely to be able to scale up within 2 years to enable a large-scale efficacy or effectiveness trial. Our focus on larger projects doesn't mean we want to miss finding out about the work of smaller community organisations. We know that we can only build up a full picture about what works if we understand the projects those organisations are delivering to as well. Right now, we're working out the best way to do that, from piloting new ways of running large trials to flexible learning projects. We know that there are lots of promising projects out there that aim to prevent children and young people becoming involved in violence, and we really look forward to hearing from you in our theme grants round or targeted project application process. Before deciding to apply to be a YEF grantee, please visit our website. This has lots of guidance, including our guidance on the data archive for long-term follow-up, and our prospectus on theme grants rounds and targeted project guidance. If you have any questions or would like to find out more about our work, please do get in touch and email us at hello@youthendowmentfund.org.uk. Thank you.